I get a fair amount of questions about reloading compared to buying factory ammo. So I want to talk through it and not really in an emotional way because there's a lot of conversation where the arguing points would be, yes, reloading saves you money, but it takes time. And if you have more money than time, then just buy the factory ammo. It's not worth the hassle. I don't think it's quite that simple, honestly. So I've actually got some numbers figured out to roughly what it costs for factory ammo compared to ballpark of what it would cost for reloading supplies, and just briefly explain the process of reloading for people not familiar. Anyway, so that's what I got in mind. So briefly for reloading, just the highlights. First part that's annoying to point out too is you're going to have to pick up your brass or purchase it. There's normally range brass, well at least for most ranges around me, brass all over the place. You can just walk around and pick it up, but it can be a little bit annoying when you're practicing. Some people use like a brass chute or a tarp, a way to kind of funnel all the brass in one direction. The issue with that is if you're shooting at multiple angles, so such as like the 180 degree line right off to your left, then straight, then right, you've got a wide arc for where all your brass is going to be kicking out at. Or if you train from multiple positions, so draw and shoot from this position, run somewhere else, then shoot from there, you're going to have a couple different stacks of brass, or if you're shooting on the move, it just ends up going everywhere. So like I said, you can use a tarp or something like that trying to police it up a little bit. But if you're moving around or actually training in a way that you're not just worried about where your brass goes, it's a little bit annoying. Once you get the brass home, you have to drop it in a tumbler. It's kind of like a rock tumbler for people familiar. Just goes in a device, you dump in media, which would be looking like sand. Kind of, it's treated with a polishing compound. You let it go for different amounts of time. That's dry tumbling. There's also wet tumbling where you put the brass in. People use a variety of things, like a small cement mixer or different devices designed for wet tumbling brass, where you put the brass in water and some kind of a polishing or cleaning component and letting it do its thing. So whichever route you choose, after several hours, then you've got brass ready to load. The way that reloading press works, in my opinion, the Dillon stuff is the best. It's maybe the more expensive, but they have good quality control, I think, and customer service. The press works pretty well. But again, a big overview of what happens. This is the way the press comes for most of them. You'll have a case feeder on the top. Well, for some models, you have to purchase it separately. But a funnel that all your brass goes into. There's a little hopper or kind of like a jar on the top that your powder goes into. So you dump a bunch of powder in that. You calibrate the press for how much powder is going to drop. Basically, every time you pull the handle to put powder into the case. There's a thing that feeds the primers down. So all these components you're going to load separately. For the primers, it's honestly about as bad as it sounds. What you do is you put, it's a little tin that's got like 100 primers in it, or a little, I guess it's not necessarily tin, it's plastic, but just a little tray, maybe is a better word to use it. Flip this tray over. We've got all the primers, a specific side up. Hopefully, if not, you'll have to adjust them so they're all facing the same way. A little pickup tube that you walk through and pick each of them up with. Then once you have this tube full of your primers, dump those in the case. Then you need projectiles also. You can buy an add-on for a bullet feeder, which is kind of like another funnel with bullets you dump in it. Otherwise, let's see, how much is that? That's $400 for that. Otherwise, some people want to save the money, put the little projectile on by hand each round. So then if you spend some money, in a broad stroke, you get to where you just, every time you pull the handle, it's feeding a case down, it's punching out the old primer, putting a new one in, dumping in powder, putting the bullet on top, crimping it, and then it's dropping it out at the end where it's loaded. So it can be pretty slick, but it does take some time and attention to do this process. Let's see. So my next question is, let's talk about the money. I think that's the part people will be here for. If you're buying factory ammo, it depends on where you get it for. There's a bunch of different deals. I buy tons of ammo from AIM Surplus, just CCI Blazer brass or PMC bronze stuff. I looked just a couple minutes ago. I could get a case of Blazer for, it depends, but it's around 22, 24, 25 cents around, somewhere in there, kind of just depending on different sites. So if you just, let's say it's 25 cents a round. Otherwise, looking at, again, this will be dated a little bit because it'll change as time. Bullets, like just the reloading components, you're going to buy it separately. So just a bullet around 7 cents. Primers have been quite crazy over the last couple years. That was really what caused this, I think, less of an interest in reloading. Primers used to pay around 30 bucks, $35 per thousand. Now they're around $80 per thousand. So that's probably before tax in most places. Some places are higher or lower, but that's kind of what retail they go for. You can find some stuff, I think like Croatian. I don't remember where else. There's some places overseas that I think are manufacturing primers. Maybe Czech that seem to work okay, but with the big names like the CCI, Winchester, Federal, that's kind of the prices you'll be paying. Powder, a bunch of different varieties, but figure around 3 cents per round per powder. Brass, you can pick up range brass or keep using it. So if I don't even factor that stuff, it's going to cost around 18 cents a round, was my just rough math to reload. So 18 cents a round compared to, let's say, 25 cents a round. So 7 cents savings every time you pull the trigger. But again, I'll kind of keep expanding into what's needed for this reloading stuff. So give you some quick prices on the press. A Dillon 750 and dies, so just kind of a, I think if you're going to be shooting volume, kind of the base press you'd want, is around 630 bucks right now on Dillon's site. If you want that bullet feeder that I was talking about, that's around 400 bucks. The case feeder is around 350 bucks. The press does not come with that. So all that together, you are at around 1,700 bucks just for the press. But you're also going to need a tumbler. So that tumbler's probably 50 bucks. A scale to weigh the powder or calibrate it to calibrate your press to make sure it's throwing the right charge or checking it. You're going to need a caliper to measure the overall length, because you have to do adjustments for how deep or how long it's seating the bullet, how long you want your ammunition to be. If you want that auto primer tube that I've got, I think it's around 300 or 400 bucks. Maybe it's more than 4. It's not cheap. So anyway, all this stuff ends up being a considerable amount of money. So should have done the exact math, but if you're saving 7 cents a round, well, and this cost depends on how much you want also, because you're probably gonna need a bench. So if you don't already have one, you need to buy one. Maybe there's another 100 bucks. You could be just in the initial batch of components for probably $3,000, which is, if you're spending, let's say it's $2,000, that's a lot of 7 cents bullets. So I'll share with you why I reload. I've reloaded since back in the day, probably easily 10, 15 years, more than that even, easily 15 years before, and it's all relative due to the economy and inflation, all that kind of stuff. But I was reloading for around 7 to 8 cents a round, which it felt like a good savings, which again was probably a 10 cent, I figured, around savings at the time when I started reloading. I'm reloading for so long, the press has easily paid for itself. However, I would not advise anyone now, after going through all this kind of stuff, hopefully get the picture. If you're interested in reloading now, even if you're a high volume shooter, I really would not advise getting a reloading press or getting into reloading for most people. The reason I stick with it is I have just an existing supply of components. So I've got probably 80,000 primers, 70 or 80,000 anyway. Powder, at least 4 or 5 8-pound containers. So let's say at least 40 pounds of powder. Projectiles, I've got stacks of them in my garage. So I've got probably 30,000 bullets on hand, just the projectiles. Brass, I've got several 5-gallon buckets. So I've got kind of an existing supply of all this stuff. If I had to go out today and source it all, it'd be a way different story. It's easier. At this point, I'll probably use up the stuff I have and then likely be done reloading pistol, just because I don't know that the juice is really worth the squeeze for as much time as it takes and needing to maintain your press. Also, I think reloading, there's some people it's not for. For example, I don't think he'd mind me telling you, my friend Nick Young, he and I talk a lot, almost daily. What made me think of this was he texted me the other day saying like, hey, would it be worth getting into reloading? Because Nick's a very high volume shooter, and he even threw out the idea of getting one of the automated presses. So there's a couple different companies like Mark 7 that have basically on top of everything here to get your press set up for another, I would look at the prices, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 more, you can turn it into an automated machine. So you have to set it up and calibrate it. But the idea being, once the machine's calibrated, clean, lubricated, it's got a little tablet, you just hit go, pick the RPM you want, and then it just reloads ammo. And there's settings for the little digital clutch for how much resistance it should have before it stops and things like that. But basically you just hit a button, go, and it just loads ammo, or prints ammo, which is a pretty cool idea. However, for a person like Nick, I advised those kind of machines, in my opinion, are for somebody that likes details and the amount of like tinkering and tuning and tearing the press apart to clean it. If you are a Glock kind of shooter where you like having a pistol that you clean it maybe once a year or every 6 months, I don't think reloading is for you, because the press with enough use, if you spill some powder, it gets inside the press, whatever, it gets gummy. You do have to do some amount of cleaning or maintenance, or have a friend, like I'm lucky enough to have my friend John, help me out when there's something with my press I can't figure out. Because it's one of those things I do like having a phone a friend for. The bulk of the stuff you could figure out just with a little bit of tinkering, patience, compressed air, oil, YouTube, but there'll be some stuff that's just, I'm not sure what I'm missing, but I'm missing something. And for that, it's kind of nice to have a resource. So since I have an existing supply of components, I'll keep loading for now, but at a lot less rate. I still buy a lot of factory ammo just due to convenience, and the QC is always there. For matches, I'm pretty meticulous about reloading stuff. Really didn't even have a difference between practice and match ammo. So for that, I used my ammo I was reloading for matches, but that might not be for everyone. For some people, the advice is buy factory ammo, use that for matches, and then just use your practice ammo for practice if there's like suspected QC issues going on. So anyway, for a person like my friend Nick, it's not his skill set. He likes to shoot. He doesn't like to tinker. He would be like shooting Glocks or Walther PDPs, something that don't take a lot of cleaning or maintenance. You just shoot the gun, and when you're done, you put it back in the case, and it'll be ready to go the next time you want to shoot. I think you need to be somebody that likes tuning or tinkering or more of an attention to detail to want to mess with it. But like I said, in my opinion, the amount of startup costs that it takes in getting everything in place and the learning curve for learning the press, money's just better spent elsewhere. For even like the top competitive shooters that want to maybe tune the ammo just a little bit to their gun, or save just a little bit for people shooting 50 or 100,000 rounds a year, maybe it makes sense. But for the bulk amount of people that, train a fair bit but aren't shooting 50,000 rounds a year, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze for reloading. The initial startup cost, the reloading or the learning curve, and then just all the time it takes to maintain the equipment's just quite a bit. So if I were talking to the version of myself today, just getting into shooting, I would just say buy Blazer Brass or PMC bronze and just shoot that, or whatever you get a good deal on, and call it good there. So hopefully that makes sense or answers your questions again about who reloading is and isn't for, and some numbers. To recap, my ballpark idea for like what I would pay, roughly 18-ish cents for reloaded ammunition and for factory ammo, depending on the deals, the sales, the shipping, all that kind of stuff. Probably somewhere between 22, 23, and 26 rounds, which is, it's more money, but I don't know if the savings justifies that initial time and money investment. So let me know what you think in the comments, if I'm off base, or if you were starting up shooting today, if you'd want to get into reloading. Either way, I appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that crap if you want. If not, it's okay too. Have a good day.